Welcome to the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast, where we equipped you to more effectively lead your seat at any employer, business, or industry in which you choose to play. Each week, we help you sharpen your leadership acumen by cracking open the playbooks of dynamic leaders who are doing big things in their professional endeavors. And now your host, leadership tactics and organizational development expert, Karen Farrell Rhodes. Hey there, my superstars. Welcome back to another episode of the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast. We are so honored to have you come and join this most exciting episode that features an absolutely outstanding guest that I cannot wait to tell you about. We are so pleased to have on today's show Ms. Kathi Enderes, who is the Senior Vice President of Research and Global Industry Analyst at the Josh Bersin Company. Now, if you are in HR and you don't know who the Josh Bersin Company is, then you are definitely not in the know. You need to definitely look them up. They are world leaders in the human capital space. And just like me, Kathi is absolutely obsessed with making work better for all. And she leads a research on how to do just that. She has extensive global experiences in human capital, talent and performance management, change management, and other specialties, and has consulted with blockbuster firms like IBM, PwC, EY, Deloitte, McKesson, and Kaiser Permanente, just to name a few. And as a data research nerd myself, I cannot wait to dig into the insights of her latest research study, or she and her team's latest research study. So welcome to the podcast, Kathi.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. I'm thrilled to be here. Looking forward to the conversations.
I am too. And, there's times like this when we have guests like you that makes me second guess only having a 30-minute podcast, because I bet we could talk for hours on the insight. But we're going to use our time together the best we can. But before we dig into the great research that you've done, we'd love to learn a little bit more about you personally first. So for as much as you feel comfortable, would you mind giving us just a sneak peek into your life outside of work?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, maybe I'm a mom of two teenage girls, 13 and 15-year-old, two girls, which is fantastic and keeps me very busy. They're competitive swimmers, so that means very early mornings. And as we just talked about, Karen, I'm not a morning person, so it's a little bit challenging. Personally, I'm actually an obsessive runner. So I've run 41 marathons, full marathons. So I love running. It wouldn't be me if I don't run every day. We just talked about too, you've seen me skydive. I'm with a picture of myself on LinkedIn. So I like to do crazy stuff like that too.
Oh, amazing. I bet it is absolutely fantastic to be your best friend, because there's probably never a boring day that happens in your
Boring,
world.
that's for sure. That's for sure.
Oh, well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And it sounds like you have a fantastic a family as well. So kudos to you surviving the teenage years, let me say.
All good so far, but I'm bracing myself.
Oh, gotcha. Well, let's jump right in, Kathi. And if you don't mind, I know you're doing some fantastic work at the Josh Bersin Company right now, but can you share a little bit about how you got started into your career, and then how did your love for research, in human capital really evolve? We'd love to hear your story.
My story. Well, I have maybe a weird nerdy secret that I'm a PhD in mathematics. So that's maybe a bad thing to. I usually don't like to share that because people say, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" But I swear it's not. I'm a normal person. I can hold a conversation and all of that. I studied mathematics. I have a PhD in mathematics because I wanted to be a professor at University of Vienna, where I'm from, Vienna, Austria. So I'm originally from Austria. Trying to guess what the accent is from. Somebody told me once, always tell people right away where you're from, because otherwise they can't listen to you because they're trying to listen for the accent.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that too when I like did a presentation. I didn't say I'm from Austria, and then in the end I say any questions, and one person raises their hand and they say, "Where you from?" And that's the only question I got. So I'm from Austria originally, and
Nice.
wanted to be a professor for at university, but in the last like semesters of my PhD thesis, I realized I looked at all these professors for mathematics, and they were incredibly intelligent, but very detached from reality. And so I said, I'm going to be them. I don't want to do that. So I decided not to do that. I went into management consulting. So I went to work for Ernst& Young back in Austria in management consulting. Didn't know anything about business, of course, because I was a mathematician, but then I learned it all. And then at some point, I got into human capital consulting, so HR consulting. I was working on a big spin-off of one company from another, and I was leading the L&D functions spin-off of like replicating that and all that. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. So I got into the HR area, just stumbled into that, and I never left anymore. So I worked there in consulting, then I worked in as a practitioner leading talent and organizational effectiveness and actually people analytics as well in some large companies, McKesson and Kaiser Permanente. And then the opportunity arose to join actually Bersin by Deloitte at that time to lead research on all of the topics that I'd done both in consulting and as a practitioner. And I took that opportunity because I'd led the people analytics team at Kaiser Permanente that did research on employees. And I said, why don't I do research on kind of organizations and what makes them effective? And so that was how I got into the research area. And I just loved it. And I still do, because I feel we can multiply the impact that we're making by working with many, many different companies and sharing insights on how to make work better. And that's my passion and your passion too, Karen. And
It
so
is.
I want to make sure that more people can love their job as the way that I love my job. So that's
Oh,
kind of what's driving me.
yeah, and I absolutely, as like I said, as a research nerd myself, I truly appreciate fellow researchers just like you because for me, the insights are just absolutely fascinating to and delivering that information to those in need that will help them increase their engagement, productivity, and success in the workplace. I could do for
Yeah.
free every day if I didn't have to pay the light bill every now and then. So,
Right. That, I mean, what somebody said to me once at a conference, what do you get paid to do research? I'm like, yes,
yeah.
believe it or not, I get paid for that. But it's awesome. It's a dream.
It
So I love it.
is. It definitely is. Well, let's dive into your latest research study. And gosh, I don't even know where to start, but I'm going to let you do so because I probably won't do it justice by trying to introduce it. So, can you share with our listeners what the research study was all about and maybe some of the initial why you all chose this particular topic in particular, and then what are some of the insights that came out of it?
Yeah. So the latest study that we're talking about, and really our biggest study that we've ever done, and also the biggest study actually done on the HR profession overall, we can claim that, and I'll explain why, was a study that we call systemic HR. So systemic HR is really a different way of operating HR, but it's not just an operating model. It's not just like, here's a new organizational model and operating model. We call this an operating system, and it really changes everything that we do in HR, but then also leadership practices and overall business practices as well. So let me just start at the beginning on why we even started researching that. So a couple of years ago, we worked with a lot of HR departments, HR teams of large organizations, and helped them solve their HR and business problems. And we realized that all the problems that we heard about, hybrid work, for example, or developing new leadership capabilities, or like how do we deal with the labor shortage, or how do we build new skills for AI? How do we integrate AI into organizational workflows? How do we organize for success? How do we foster diversity, equity, inclusion? All of these topics that we came to our mind and to our desk basically as we were talking with organizations are really not single domain like problems. So if you think, for example, any of these problems, take like leadership development, for example, building a new generation of leaders, more human-centered leaders that we need now in this moment in time with AI coming in, because AI can take the non-human things, but we need to be more human, not less human, right? So
Right.
pick that, for example. Well, this is not just the learning and development team's opportunity to build leaders, right? Like who is accountable for that? Well, recruiting has a part in it, because who you hire into the organization actually who like basically dictates who you can how you can develop people. If you hire the wrong people in that are not aligned with your values, with how that organization operates, well, then all the development won't work. So recruitment has a part in it. Of course, retention has a part in it too. What experience we create for these leaders has a big part in that too, because you might hire the right people, but then they might look at around and say, well, this is not how where I want to work. I can't speak up. Nobody's listening to me. Maybe my perspectives are not valued. And then they're going to leave right away again. And that certainly happens when you think about people lower down in the organization. For example, when you hire aspiring leaders, but then you don't let them like flourish and grow and all of that, well, they're going to look around and say, I'm going to leave you again. So employee experience, how you reward them, of course, matters to that too, right?
Right.
What you recognize, what you reward for. So that's also part of leadership development. Of course, how you build leaders, how you train them, what mentors they have, what connections they have, what training programs they go to. So learning and development, leadership development, of course, plays a role in that too. But then also, how do you organize things? How do you set up the jobs of the leader to begin with? You're very hierarchical, or do you have teams that work together in new ways? So organization design, organization effectiveness, all of these kind of disciplines have to work together, and that goes through any of these problems that we talked about. Pick any of them. I picked the leadership development, but any of the problems, like if you think about retention of people, skill building, new hybrid work models, any of those are not single domain problems. So we said all the problems are interconnected, but most of the HR organizations are actually very specialized in silos. So you have the recruiting team that does recruiting, right? You have the learning and development team that does training and learning and development. You have the total rewards team that just looks for compensation and benefits. You have the employee experience team that looks for like the experience that people have. You have diversity, equity, inclusion team that looks out for that. You have talent management that just looks for talent, like performance management. So all of these kind of silos that we've created don't serve us all that well anymore. And that's how most organizations operate, right? And so we have set up, maybe really 30 years ago, we've set up these HR operating models that drive us to be very siloed in our operations. And we really just work off problems. We call it like operating like the 80s IT department, where somebody just calls in, right? And they call in a problem, and then we say, okay, let me work off that ticket, and we work it through the funnel, and then that ticket is gone, and we can kind of
Move on to
go
the
back
next
to
one.
doing what we're doing. We're
Right.
on to the next thing. But really, that doesn't work anymore, because such big problems come to HR, right? I mean, especially since the pandemic, HR is right at the center of everything that we do in the organization. And the most important strategic partner to the CEO for many organizations now is the CHRO, because most of the CEOs say actually the problems that keep them up at night is talent, it's continuous transformation of the organization, it's organizational effectiveness, it's hiring the right people, it's having the right skills, if adoption of AI, all of those things are talent problems, right? They are HR problems. And so now we are in this state where we have to rethink how we operate the HR function in a completely different way. So we started out to set out, and it actually took us 2 years to study this, because we did many things. We did really got four different inputs, and that's where the like being the biggest study comes in. So first input that we did is we did a massive study of over 100 HR and management practices of over 1,000 organizations globally. So we asked the organizations all these things on how do you set your HR strategy? How do you develop kind of your people strategy? How do you align it to the business strategy? How do you operate? What roles do you have in HR? What skills do you have in HR? How do you like define basically accountabilities? What's the accountabilities of leaders? Where does the CHRO sit on the C-suite, all of those kind of questions. What technologies do you use as well? So we asked lots and lots of different questions. And then we also interviewed over 30 CHROs, very large, successful companies around the globe that we thought they have probably something to share. And we got some like validation and case studies on that. So that was one thing. The second thing that we fed into that was all of our 15 domain studies. So we've studied over the years all of the domains. We've studied talent acquisition, we studied total rewards, learning and development, on and on and on. We fed all of those insights into that study as well. Then the third input that we have is we have an HR capability model and framework where over 9,000 HR people have self-assessed themselves against 96 HR capabilities. And so we fed the insights on what are HR people good at, what are they not good at, where should they be good at, what are the most differentiating capabilities. We also fed that into that study. And the last input that we had is we worked with LinkedIn to get actually the profiles of 7.5 million HR into that study as well. So 7.5 million HR people on LinkedIn. Just let that sink in. So there's 7.5 million HR people just on LinkedIn. And if you want to calculate how many people are in the world in the HR profession, it's probably like 3 times as much
Oh,
because not
absolutely.
everybody's on LinkedIn. There's whole countries that don't use LinkedIn. I don't think China uses LinkedIn. It's a
Yeah.
massive country, obviously. So if you think about how many HR people are there out in the world, it's probably like 21, 22, 23, maybe
Millions.
25 million HR people. So it's a really big profession.
And
And
I'm
LinkedIn
honored to
also
be
showed
one
us
of those, Kathy. So maybe my input is in your research.
your profile definitely is because if you're on LinkedIn, we pulled all of the like profiles and all of the insights from. There's actually 400 different HR skills that are on LinkedIn of HR professionals, and that has increased by a third in the last 5 years. So there's
Amazing.
getting more and more skills because the profession is getting more complex, and the problems that we're addressing is getting more and more strategic, but also more complex. So 400 skills. There's 250 different HR jobs in on LinkedIn. 250 different jobs. Let that think in. So it's pretty, and that has increased by a quarter as well over the last 5 years. So also because the profession is getting more and more complex, there's just more different jobs. There's new jobs that were not even jobs before. Like now you see jobs like AI trainers or something like that, and like generative AI kind of HR trainers and all of that. But then I also see things like, of course, product managers for HR products, right? That wasn't the case maybe 10 years ago. We were
Not
not
at all.
thinking about our HR solutions as products. So all of those new jobs are coming in as well. So that's kind of how we get started. And
So now out of
and it took
all of
us,
that data, I mean, what were some of the learnings that you found out of that? I mean, that is just a tremendous data set to start with. And I'm
yeah.
sure you've had a lot of insights that came out of that. So can you share a few of those with us?
Of course, of course. Yeah. So the first thing that we wanted to see is how, like, is the model and the approach that we have today, is it actually working? And we saw, no, it's not working. For most organizations, it's not addressing the business problems that companies have to address. So we created this 4-level maturity model, and if you follow us, you've seen them. We always create these 4-level maturity model where we bucket all of the companies into kind of 4 levels of maturity, with level 1 the least impactful and level 4 the most impactful. And when we say impactful, we don't just think about HR or people impact, we also think about business impact. So financial performance, customer delight, and also innovation and kind of change adaptability. So we want to see balanced impact, and we show all of this impact by kind of correlation and seeing what of the HR practices that organizations can do actually correlate most with impact. So we saw that most of the organizations are actually not focusing on the right things. So in other words, most of the HR organizations in the lower levels of maturity measure their success by HR success measures or even by efficiency success measures, when they should really measure their success by business success measures. So in other words, the most successful, the systemic HR organizations set out to say we are successful if the business is successful. We're not just successful if it costs less money to operate HR services, or we have good time to fill in recruiting or something like that. We are measuring our success by the business accomplishing what the business has to accomplish. Very different orientation.
Very.
So yeah, for example, like New York Presbyterian, very large healthcare system in New York, they told us the story that how they measure their HR success is by the business accomplishing the three things that the business sets out to do. And so their business sets out to do be more digitally oriented, to expand their footprint, and to provide better care to more people kind of in the New York area. So those are their three business success measures. And HR, the CHRO, Sean Smith, he told me that I'm only counting us to be successful if we accomplish that for the business. So if we help the business with the people, of course, that we have to expand the footprint, to be more digitally basically oriented, and to provide better, cheaper care to more people in the New York area. Very different approach than saying, well, we just measure our
Retention
cost
rates
of
are
service. Retention rates, exactly. Retention rates, or like how satisfied people are with the tickets that we work off, like the IT service department of the 80s, right?
right.
That's all nice and good. But if the business is not successful, what is the HR doing?
Yeah.
And then you can't have kind of a
Can
business. You
I ask
can't
you a
pay
quick
people
question
and all of that. Yeah,
about that? So, what is fascinating, and I give you, a virtual high five, is that I can see where all of this is true. Your data is true. But what I found in our research is that there are very few overstaffed HR functions, right? If any. I
very
haven't
true.
met one yet.
Absolutely.
So I'm just curious if your executives or leaders that you all interviewed had any insights on how they're trying to be more strategic or use their internal talent or maybe external consultants helping them to use their time better to better address some of these business needs that are a lot more meaty than just like processing payroll, right? If you're really
That's right.
impacting
Yeah,
business metrics, you're dealing with some major strategies, change management efforts, innovation,
yeah,
and they
absolutely.
may not have all the talent to do so. Did you get any insights by chance on any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really a journey. So if I think about the journey going through like from level 1 to level 4, you got to build on, of course, you're going to like basically process payroll, right? If people are not paid well, all the other strategic stuff won't
Goes
matter
out the
because you
window.
can't pay people, right? Exactly. You don't have a place even to be strategic. So of course, you got to build on what we call level 1 transactional compliance, where HR really just looks at the nuts and bolts and say, we need to process payroll and we need to hire some people and give people some benefits, that kind of thing. Technology can really help, of course. So most organizations, when they're trying to move from this level 1, what we call transactional compliance, and by the way, there's almost 40% of organizations are still at that level of HR
Really?
operating more like a cost center. Yeah, almost
Wow.
40%, 39%. They go through what they call an HR transformation. And the HR transformation, I've worked on many of them as well in my consulting career, goes like this. Usually a consulting company comes to you, like a big consulting company comes to you and says, you should implement a technology like Workday or Oracle or SAP, the HCM technology to streamline all of this transactional stuff to make sure payroll gets done well, but then also to make sure your recruiting gets done more efficiently and your compensation gets processed better, and you can have some manager self-service, you can have some employee self-service. And that's all great. And then they implement one of these systems, which is totally necessary, of course, but it really doesn't transform the HR function, of course. It just streamlines operations. And that's necessary, but not sufficient. So then you have this, what we call level 2, this efficient service delivery kind of support process where HR operates like a support function. So it's not a business function yet, it's a support function. And that's really, really important. Technology can really help with that, obviously, that you don't have to have all these people doing duplicative work and all of that, and making sure that things get processed faster, smoother, and better and cheaper and all of that. Usually at that time, then the complaints about HR stop coming in, because at level 1 there's lots of complaints usually because lots of duplication and nobody knows what anybody's doing and all of that.
Right.
When you go to, I mean, it's kind of fun. Then at this level 2, at the efficient service delivery model, It's the typical HR service delivery model that we've had, by the way, since 1995, when we had this introduced this tiered service delivery model where you have technology as the lowest tier, basically, of processing stuff. Then you say, well, we have a call center, a service center that takes the next level of efficiency. And then we have all these centers of excellence, the recruiting center of excellent learning, total rewards, on and on. And then on top of that, we have HR business partners that presumably should work with the business on kind of more strategic stuff. But most of the time, and you mentioned it too, they don't have time for that because there's lots still to be done because managers don't really know how am I going to put the requisition into the system, or how do I deal with an employee situation that always comes, an employee that always comes in late, or how do I do kind of put a transfer into the system, or any of those kind of things. Well, at that time, like at this level two, then organizations look at all these problems that that they're supporting, and they say maybe we need to bring in cross-domain solutions. So these products, like an onboarding, for example, is a great example.
Right.
Onboarding is, of course, by its definition, it's very, very cross-domain focused. And so they say maybe we should bring in a product manager for the onboarding solution that works across all these centers of excellence, also works with the HR business partners, and streamlines that and manages an end to end. And that's already a huge jump. And usually, actually, you don't need more people; you need less people if
Yeah.
you do it well. But so and a level four where you really, what we call, fall in love with the problems, where you really deeply first understand what the problems there really are that you want to solve for, quantify them, use data and analytics to really understand which ones are the most important business problems, not HR problems, and then bring
Help them
in
implement it
cross-domain teams to support them. That's kind of the systemic HR
at the
approach, if
highest
you want.
level.
So
And so do you
highest
all
level.
have consulting teams that help guide companies through all of these 4 levels?
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah,
like a
we do.
long-term
Yeah.
partnership that you're looking when a company
Yes.
embraces the systemic HR model.
Exactly. And we do that. We help. It's not that we put just a research report out and then we say, oh, we're done with it and good luck with it.
Right.
Because I mean, there's so many things, of course. You
Yeah.
listen to this, and as you listen to this, and also if you read this big report that we've written, you probably have more questions than answers, right? You'll say, wow, this sounds so interesting, but how do I
How
do
do I
this?
make
How
it
do
real
I
for us, right?
how do I make it real? Exactly. How do I fall in love with the problem? How do I get the data? How do I prioritize? How do I bring together cross-functional business teams and consulting teams within HR? And how do I help them come together really quickly, solve the business problems? What is even a business problem? How do I understand a business problem? And by the way, this is one of the hardest things for HR people to articulate.
Yeah.
What are your business problems? Like we just did a workshop yesterday with a very large consumer products company, and we asked them, what are your biggest business problems? And all the problems we heard were HR problems. We're trying to set up our L&D processes. We're trying to streamline our performance management. And we're like, well, that's not a business problem. What is the business problem that you're trying to solve with that?
But in all
So
fairness, though, Kathy, I don't think that most HR professionals were either taught or learned how to think, to your point, as problems as business problems. I mean, they would listen to their business
yes.
colleagues and executives, but it's a skill or muscle that we definitely need to build as an HR community, in my humble opinion, if I could.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, as we looked into how do you actually do that, the capabilities of the HR people is a huge factor in
It
all of
is.
this. So how do we help? Because you can't say, well, here's your new role, but you don't know how to do this new role, right? You can say, well, you're now a business consultant, and people say, well, I don't know what that means, and I don't know how to understand the business problems. I don't know consulting skills.
Yeah.
I've never done it before. So of course, we need to up level and upskill the HR capabilities that every HR person has to help them be more business savvy, to help them with consulting skills, to help them coach leaders and managers, redesign the organization, help them with fostering change agility in the organization, all of those kind of skills that we realized through our data and through our insights that actually drive high organizational performance and high employee engagement and a great employee experience. So yeah, the skill building. And meanwhile, actually, only 8% of organizations actually have even any HR development program in their organization.
Isn't that
So there's
crazy?
hardly anybody has. has a program. We talked with a very large consulting company, and they said we spent $5,000 on client-facing consultants. And we said, well, that's great on their development, right? So they get $5,000 a year worth of development. And we said, how much do you spend on HR people? And guess how much they spend on HR people a year? So they spend 5,000 a
500?
year on
500.
500. You got it exactly right. 500, a tenth. You got it right.
I'm
Wow.
sad that I was right, but yeah,
I'm
that'd be my
sad, but
guess.
happy that you got it right, but then also sad you got it right. $500, so a tenth of
Pennies,
that.
pennies.
They spend like hardly anything. And how can, if HR is the most important business function now, how can they be like the business consultants to support the business if you're not like supporting their development? Of course,
Insanity.
that's a problem.
Absolutely
So yeah, so
insanity.
developing the HR profession is a huge opportunity. And development, of course, means learning courses, but and we have the Josh Bersin Academy where people can go in there and learn together, and it's cohort based and it's great. But then also learning through projects, right?
Yes,
Project assignments. If I'm an HR business partner and I want to learn more about a project in another area that I'm not working in, maybe I can work on a project there. Maybe I can be the project lead for the new onboarding project.
that's
Maybe
right.
I can kind of work on leadership development as well. So building these capabilities not just through formal education, but then also through project work, finding mentors, huge opportunity. Of
Very
course,
huge
doesn't cost
opportunity.
anything, right? Doesn't cost anything.
It
You can just
doesn't. We just need to
pay
give
people
the opportunity, right,
the
to actually
opportunity,
develop it on
and
that. So, oh my
exactly.
god.
It doesn't cost anything. And usually, like project opportunities is the most underutilized
Yeah,
opportunity of all, because not only does it get you kind of the work done that you might otherwise outsource maybe to consultants.
right,
Why don't you have your internal people working on projects
and let them grow
and
through
teach
that.
them and let them grow with that? But
Um,
so, and it also creates community, it creates cross company connections,
it does.
all of that great thing, like rotating people around. Rotation is a huge other
I wrote it
underutilized opportunity where you basically can say, well, how do we rotate people, maybe even within HR, but even outside of HR,
that's right.
rotating people into the business and from the business into HR. We talked with Lego, for example, and they have their CHRO, Lawrence Schuster. He doesn't come from the HR profession. He used to be in marketing in Google, and then he used to run operational like, units at Lego. And so he is a very business savvy and business focused person, and he rotates people all the time within HR, but then also outside of HR. So
That's
he
what you
puts
need to
some of
do,
his recruiters maybe into sales, and he brings some of the IT people into people
and
analytics
that's
and
how
all of
they
that.
learn.
And
That's how definitely
and
how
that's
they
how they
learn.
learn, and that's what they
Oh,
how they bring also their knowledge into the organization.
I
So
know.
lots to do, lots of things to
Lots
do,
of
basically to
opportunities.
work more systemically. Exactly. But
Now
I
see,
think that
Kathy,
going
I knew we were
going
gonna run out of time. Didn't I say we needed an
I
hour?
know.
Didn't I
I
say
think we
we
needed
needed an
an
hour?
hour. Sorry, I keep going. Yeah, I would keep going forever. So
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? There's only one solve for this. We got to have you back if you ever have extra time because there's, I know, a ton more that we can talk about.
lots more to
Yeah.
talk about for sure.
Well, before we let you
Yeah.
go, as you know, we love to ask our guests their perspectives on some of the research that we've done here at SDL. And before the show, you were so kind enough to share with us that as you all know, we did research on leadership execution, and we love to ask which of the tactics that are universal, no matter your profession or industry, really jumped out for you. And you were so kind enough to share that leading with strategic decision making really resonated with you. And for our new listeners out there, leading with strategic decision making is all about making great decisions yourself as a leader or leading a fantastic decision making process with your team or your colleagues. So, curious minds want to know, Kathy, why did leading with strategic decision making really resonate for you?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we had talked about just right now about the systemic HR study that we had done is being aligned to strategy is the most important thing for the HR function to make sure that you're aligned with the business strategy. We talked about how you, for example, need to measure your success of the HR function by the business success, not by the HR success alone. So being aligned to the strategy of what you want to do either strategically as an organization or what you want to accomplish with your initiative, always asking the why. It goes back to my training as a consultant early on, where they taught us to ask why 5 times to get to the bottom of the problem. So
Right.
all of that has to do with strategic decision making. And I think the decision making is key, because decision making means knowing what to say yes to, but also what to say no to.
Right.
And that's the hardest thing that we always have to wrestle with too. It's always, we want to do more with less. I always feel we need to do less with less.
Less
So
with
how can we
less.
have less? We need to do less, right? What comes off the plate?
I love
What are we not going to do? What are we going to say no to and deprioritize, so we can give our best to the things that we say yes to?
that.
So that's all part of leading with strategic decision making.
Oh, I love that. What can I tell you? I'm really shedding a tear that we have to close now, but
Oh, no.
but you have been absolutely fantastic, Kathi. Kudos on this fantastic research study. We're going to have a ton of information in our show notes about it, but I'd like to give you just a few seconds to give voice to where people can find you, more about the study, and more about your consulting teams that can potentially help them if they're interested in implementing systemic HR in their organizations.
Yeah, thanks for that, Karen. So yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, of course. I'd love to have with anybody have the connection on LinkedIn. So you can find me under my name, Kathi Enderes, on LinkedIn, pretty easy. All of our services and our support materials on our site, joshbersin.com. There we also have information on how to become a corporate member. So we help our corporate members who can take advantage of all the research that we do, as well as our advisory supports for systemic HR and everything else that you might need help in with the HR function, or with anything like leadership development, HR, learning and development, all of those kind of areas of things. We also have lots of insights on the HR technology area, which is a huge enabler. I mentioned it before for systemic HR. You can't really do any of this without forward-looking kind of AI-based HR technology as well.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Kathi, for the gift of your time and sharing the insights that came out your research. We are so thrilled that you took the time to spend with us today, because there was so much information and gems that you shared. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. It was a pleasure, and I'd love to connect maybe again soon.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And thank you to listeners for the gift of your time as well. We know there are literally a million other podcasts that you could be listening to at this time. So we do not take your followership lightly. We just love to bring fantastic and innovative guests like Kathi to you. So all that we ask that you please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast, and just share with one friend, so that all of us together can get smarter about leading at the top of our game. Thanks so much, and see you next week. And that's our show for today. Thank you for listening to the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast, where we help you lead your seat at any employer, business, or industry in which you choose to play. You can check out the show notes, additional episodes, bonus resources, and also submit guest recommendations on our website at leadyourgamepodcast.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn by searching for the name Karen Rhodes, with Karen being spelled Karan. And if you like the show, the greatest gift you can give would be to subscribe and leave a rating on your podcast platform of choice. This podcast has been a production of Shockingly Different Leadership, a global consultancy which helps organizations execute their people, talent development, and organizational effectiveness initiatives on an on-demand project or contract basis. Huge thanks to our production and editing team for a job well done. Goodbye for now.